This is a discussion.
No,
This-
in a session.
Well, yeah. It's basically a discussion on this, so I'm a firm believer in hearing both sides of any argument. So this is what we're here for, so I just want to make sure everyone keep, whatever comments we have, we keep it civil. Number two, please pay attention. We have a lot of screens here. You got to keep it exactly to 3 minutes, so just make sure you keep an eye on the time. We have 27 speakers, so I want to make sure everybody's heard for their 3 minutes, okay? And further ado, Councilwoman Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, well, to clarify, I know that a lot of folks on social media land said that this was an opportunity for questions and answers, and this is not the forum. This is an opportunity to hear from you guys about what's going on with our rent and housing, et cetera. Rent stabilization, weighing the pros and the cons, is a strategic goal of this administration. So what better way than to hear from the people about what they're facing? So with that, we do have an agenda. We're next going to go over some Maryland law. I feel like there's been some changes recently, and not a lot of people are aware what happened at the state level, so we're going to go over that. And then we'll have the public comment, and that will be facilitated by Mary Waltemeyer. She will make sure that we stay on track with the topics at hand, and then we'll have our closing remarks. And before we get started, I want to echo again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for a lot of the folks that have shared and your advocacy. I really, really appreciate that. Scott.
Scott?
Just real briefly, as far as state law is concerned, Maryland does not have a statewide rent control, any legislation or anything in Comar that does rent control. However, there are two counties in the state, Montgomery County and Prince George's County, that do cap annual rent increases. Montgomery County, as of July 2024, limit rent increases to the Consumer Price Index for the Washington area plus 3%, with a max cap of 5.7%, which was effective July of 2025. Prince George's County has the Permanent Rent Stabilization and Protection Act of 2024 that limits rent increases generally capped at 6% or CPI, Consumer Price Index plus 3%, whatever is lower. There's also a municipality that has rent stabilization ordinance. That's Mount Rainier, which is right by the DC line. They cap annual rent increases at 60% of the CPI for properties at least 15 years old. There is also the closest thing in state law to something like this would be legislation that was passed last year that Governor Moore signed, called the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act of 2024. That became effective October 1st of 2024, creating the first statewide tenant opportunity to purchase law in the nation, lowers security deposit maximums, establishes an Office of Tenant and Landlord Affairs that acts as a central resource for renters and increases the cost to file for an eviction. So that law is out there. It's about 50 pages long, so I'm not going to read that word for word to you. But it is available out on the governor's office website.
One thing to add, in the press release at the bottom is a link directly to the state page. And if you click English, it'll take you to the Maryland Tenant Bills of Rights. And on that lists some changes, some things you should be aware of, like application fees, pet policies, application expenses. So I really, really encourage everyone to take a look at that. It's about 14 pages. All right.
So thank you all for being here and taking part in this discussion tonight. Just as a reminder, this is really an opportunity to hear from residents, landlords, and community about housing stability issues, including rent increases, evictions, renovations, pet fees, and security deposits, and really helping them guide decision-making in the future. So we will be going in order as you folks signed up to speak this evening, and I'll go through that in just a minute. Just as a reminder, each speaker will have 3 minutes, and there's 2 monitors here so that you can kind of regulate that yourselves. Comments will only be related to the topics tonight on rent stabilization and that kind of thing. Respectful dialogue is expected. There is an opportunity to provide written comments tonight to be submitted to Donna over here at the desk, and then also after the meeting tonight within 2 weeks of this discussion this evening. Please be aware that this discussion tonight is being recorded for public distribution after this meeting. We will ask that as you come up to speak that you come to the podium so that you're well seen and heard. So we'll go ahead and get started. Starting tonight will be Jane Page Thompson, followed by Crystal Ray and Christina Dana. So Ms. Thompson?
I am from 11 St. Paul Street, Boonesboro. I am a property manager who moved here from the deep south, and the cold was just about to kill me earlier. So thank you guys for getting the doors open. I also want to thank you for focusing on this very important issue. As a realtor, as a real estate investor, and as a landlord here in Hagerstown and Washington County, it is of a deep concern to me. But what really worries me is that you're using Montgomery and Prince George's County as a guide. And just to remind y'all, I didn't know, you all do, forgive my ignorance. Montgomery County has a population of about over 1 million people. Prince George's County has right at 1 million. The average income in Montgomery County is $128,000. The average income in Prince George's County is around $100,000. Y'all know, Hagerstown, we got 43,900 people, and our average per person income is about $30,000. So for us to try and apply a big city, high dollar, 3 times basis, ad valorem tax basis solution to something that's really personal in a small town like Hagerstown may not be the best solution. But I do want to give you a couple of ideas or some things you might not be aware of. The census data has said that in 2025, it costs the average person to have a property in Hagerstown $1,497 a month. The average rent in Hagerstown for the same size home is $1,100 to $1,300. That's a net loss for any landlord, potentially, of $197 a month. Now, I also want to point out, the same statistics show us from Zillow in 2025 that Montgomery County had rent rates that were 33% above the national average. Hagerstown, y'all are 30% below. So that's the right direction. That's good. And in the last 10 years, Hagerstown rent increases have averaged over only about 1.2%. That's unlike the 5% and the 6% you were talking about in those other places. But landlords have had a 22.8% increase in their ad valorem tax basis and a 26% increase in their property insurance. So the costs are going up, but the landlords have managed to keep the rents low, which is actually good news for the city of Hagerstown. So maybe focusing on some things like public access maintenance, especially with the snow, that's a big cost for landlords, and some things like increasing wages when you negotiate an economic development incentive, or helping tenants with having a property manager registry. I'm willing to pay you money to register every year so that you know where their security deposits are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Next, we have Crystal Ray, followed by Christina Dana and Regina Hawkins. Crystal Ray doesn't appear to be in attendance at this point. Christina Dana. Okay, we'll move to Regina Hawkins. Next up, Sherry Yarborough.
While we wait, this meeting is being recorded.
So I wanted to mention about the City of Hagerstown Housing Authority. They have illegally evicted me and other people. They have submitted fake documents to the court. They have garnished my checks for over $12,000. I thought that the Hagerstown Housing Authority was here to help and not hurt people. The maintenance men, and everything that I'm saying I could prove. The maintenance men are going into people's homes, dragging kids down the steps. I can prove, like I said, I can prove everything. One day I woke up and the maintenance man was standing over my bed. I didn't know he was there, why he was there. They're just coming into people's homes. They're not following HUD guidelines. They are making people pay for things that they're not supposed to be paying for. Like I said, and I have filed several motions with the court. I've also filed a motion with the Attorney General, with the Bar Association, with HUD, and I'm getting no results from these people stealing my money. Well, garnishing my check, let me rephrase that. So at this point, I don't know what else to do. So I'm here to see if I can get some type of results or some type of help in resolving this issue that they're harming several families in Hagerstown, and they're not supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to be helping, and that's what they're not doing. Like I said, I just filed a motion a couple of months ago, and it got denied again. I was told the judge that I can prove, I have a video, because they submitted pictures that I destroyed their unit, and I didn't. I have actual footage of the unit the day I was evicted. I told all of this to the judge, and the judge keeps denying my motions. So at this point, I don't know what else to do. I have exhausted my 401k due to this 25% of my wages that they're taking. So they have created, making it hard for me to survive. I do make good money, but I don't see it because they're taking it all. So at this point, I don't know what to do, but I would like something to be done, or somebody can contact me regarding this so this can be rectified, so they can stop hurting families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yarborough. Next, Ms. Carrie Cosner. She'll be followed by Michael Stanford and Sean Porter.
I'll speak really loud because I couldn't hear in the back. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the proposed imposition of rent control in Hagerstown. As a landlord in Hagerstown, born just down the street, I'm an invested member who cares deeply about our community. I urge you to consider the broader implications of this policy, not just for tenants, but for the vitality of our city as a whole. Let's start with the simple truth. Costs are rising for everyone. The city of Hagerstown has responsibly adjusted its own rates to address inflationary pressures. The city has increased property taxes, water and sewer fees, trash collection charges, electrical rates, all to my tenants to cover the city's internal costs to maintain essential services. These adjustments are necessary, and I respect the tough decisions that you had behind them. Yet landlords like me face the very same challenges. Our property taxes have surged as much as 50% in recent years. Just got an assessment that is more than double the current assessment. Property insurance premiums have climbed over 30%. Interest rates on my mortgages have jumped by 75%, and maintenance and repair costs continue to escalate due to supply chain issues and labor shortages and other aspects. These are not luxuries. They're the basic cost of keeping safe, habitable housing available. It's particularly puzzling to see this disparity in expectations. The city, as I noted, has doubled its electric per kilowatt hour to my tenants from 0.055 cents to 11 cents in just the last 2 years. And when I asked why that happened, it said, oh, we had to cover our expenses, our rates went up. So do mine. What's up with that? If the city must adapt to these realities, why should we landlords be forced to keep our rents frozen when our costs are rising exponentially? Such a mandate ignores the economic pressures that we all share and risk undermining the quality of our housing stock. Moreover, I have been vocal about the outstanding work that the Hagerstown's Economic Development Council, but that you have right down the street, works tirelessly and professionally to attract investors, bringing much needed housing to our community. Rent control would directly counteract these efforts. Investors seek stable, predictable returns, not policies that cap revenues while costs soar. This would drive progress away, stifling new development and leaving our housing shortages unaddressed. I respectfully suggest that we acknowledge the tenants' understandable desire for stable rents. No one wants housing insecurity, but imposing controls would diminish supply and would force landlords maintaining properties only to bare minimum code standards. Over time, this erodes growth, diminishes property values, and hampers the prosperity of our great town. I know we share the same goal to do what is best for our town. Together we can continue to build a thriving Hagerstown for all. I would respectfully request that you do not consider it something that has already been predetermined, but that you really listen to all aspects. It's a big picture, it's a big question. Listen to everything and make that tough decision and decide against rent control. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Our next speaker, Mr. Michael Stanford, then Mr. Sean Porter, and then Leslie Allen.
Excuse me? Oh, good evening. My name's Michael Stanford. I've worked as a real estate broker and property manager for over 30 years. And I currently own or manage about 40 residential units in the city, along with a shopping center and an office building. I want to share what housing providers are facing and how recent and proposed policies are affecting both landlords and tenants. Operating costs are increasing sharply. In one of my 7-unit apartment buildings, water, sewer, trash, gas, and electric rose by $2,700 in 2025, a 36% increase, with more hikes expected in 2026. Property taxes on that same building went up $4,400. Altogether, we got $6,800 more per year. That's $81 per month per unit increase. A proposed state bill currently is trying to require all buildings with 4 or more units to install central air. For my 7-unit property, that's about $10,000 per unit, $70,000 total, with a 10-year lifespan on a mini split, adding roughly $83 per month per unit just to cover the installation, not counting maintenance and repairs. These rising costs make it increasingly difficult to maintain housing without adjusting rents. Recent state law changes also affect security deposits and pet deposits. These are outlined in the Tenant Bill of Rights that landlords are required to give their tenants. It also covers application fees. Since October 1st, 2024, the combined security and pet deposit cannot exceed 1 month's rent and must be returned with interest within 45 days unless there are damages, unpaid rent, utilities, or court-ordered fees. Failure to return deposits on time can result in penalties up to 3 times the withheld amount to landlords. While well-intentioned, these rules remove flexibility that previously helped applicants with weaker credit and pets qualify for housing. Many landlords are now either not renting to people with pets or instituting a pet fee. Service animals, of course, are exempt from all of this. Housing providers are navigating rising costs and increasing regulation, making it harder to maintain safe, quality housing while keeping rents stable. I urge the council to consider policies that balance tenant protections with the real economic pressures on property owners so that Hagerstown can continue to offer stable, affordable housing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford. Our next speaker, Mr. Sean Porter, then we'll have Leslie Allen and Nancy Allen.
Just waiting for the timer. Alrighty, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Those are the 9 scariest words in the English language, according to a great man in history, David Lee Roth. Now, I have owned rental properties in the city of Hagerstown and in Washington County. I currently don't own a thing. The reason why I divested from real estate, specifically the real estate in the city of Hagerstown, is the fact that carry costs, the cost of paying the taxes is just simply too high. You don't make enough return on your money. It's like putting your money to sleep, at least in my opinion. Soviet era price controls have never worked. So if you guys try and say you can only raise the rents by 6% per year, which is roughly what Montgomery County's rent control laws are, what you're going to have is less opportunities to rent properties, less people will own rental properties, and the reason is simple. Property taxes, at least as of lately, have gone up more than that amount. So basically, it wouldn't even cover the increase in the property taxes that landlords are having to pay on their real estate if they were constrained to only 6% per year maximum. It simply doesn't make any sense to do that. So what's going to happen? You're going to tell investors that they should make less return on their money. That's not going to happen. They're going to sell off their properties, and that's less properties that people have to rent. That's less opportunities for families to rent homes in Hagerstown, and as a result, there'll be less inventory, which guess what? It's going to make things more expensive overall. And at the same time, it's also going to hurt people with lower FICO scores, people with issues on their credit, people with backgrounds, because they're going to have more people to choose from as a landlord. And so they're going to go for the absolute cream of the crop. They're not going to rent to someone with a 600 FICO score if they got someone with a 720 FICO score that has a clean background. So it's going to actually hurt the very people that you guys are trying to help. It's called, you have the best intentions, but you're going to have unintended consequences as a result. So you're going to try to help the poorest of the poor, the people who have to rent a $1,000 a month apartment, what have you, and you're going to end up just driving up the cost. You're going to make it more expensive. You're going to make it more difficult. You're going to price people out of homes and actually probably increase homelessness in the county and in the city as a result of taking all those rental properties off the market by constraining what you can actually get as a return on that investment. It simply doesn't make any sense. So it's just I just want to point out that assessments, at least from what I've observed, have gone up by as much as double in the last few years. The State Department of Assessments has said this property that was worth $200,000, it's worth $400,000 now. And the taxes go up in proportion. That means the monthly cost of that property goes up in proportion. That's going to get passed on to the renters. And just to point out, the city was forced to increase property taxes recently. The renters have to pay it. You can't saddle the landlords. We're just going to have to sell out, like I did. Take care.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Leslie Allen. Following Leslie is Nancy Allen and then Donald Joseph Schlothart.
Thank you. What they've said is accurate. There's two sides to this. You've got the social concern and you've got the investors. And the investors and the social concern are both straddled with an economic problem. Even when there's advantages to either. A renter doesn't have to maintain a property, the landlord does. Landlord gets this tax deduction. A homeowner or renter doesn't. So there's a balance, and I think that's what we're down to, is this balance between the two groups. And the question is, how do you fairly compromise? And I think there's two things that I would say that are places to look. One of the things is how we fund this government anyways, and part of it is property taxes. And there are a lot of properties here that at some point in time, someone or some group determined that that value as a return on investment to the public in a private-public partnership outweighed their tax requirements, so they became exempt properties. If some of those properties were reevaluated, perhaps in some other format to contribute to that budget, even though they are exempt, there might be some leeway to reduce the cost of government, to reduce some of the other costs that are being borne by the landlords and therefore by the tenants. And there was only one thing I thought of that I saw in the time I've lived in this community, is that the only thing that was added was the stormwater expense, although expensive and maybe wasn't sold well that we were going to incur as much as we have. It is applied to every parcel. So tax exempt properties are responsible for paying their share, and perhaps there is something else that can be borne more fairly, looking outside of just the topic of rent control. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Nancy Allen, followed by Donald Joseph Schlothart, and then Rebecca Homan.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nancy Allen, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Penmar Realtors, which is the local realtor association serving professionals here in Washington County, Maryland, across Franklin and Fulton counties, Pennsylvania. Our members include realtors, brokers, property managers, housing partners who work directly with renters, homeowners, and small housing providers every day. And by that, we are able to provide firsthand policy, how housing policy plays out in real life. We're here to provide practical, real-world perspective and to help ensure local efforts complement existing Maryland law while supporting housing stability, supply, and responsible homeownership. We appreciate this opportunity and look forward to further conversations and collaboration. And with that, I'd like to go over some of the points that were mentioned in the town hall this evening. So evictions, they're already covered by Maryland law, including notice requirements, court procedures, and tenant protections. Local efforts are most effective when focused on education, coordination, and prevention rather than duplicating statute. Renovations and capital improvements, state law, again, and building codes already regulate safety, habitability, and construction standards. We agree that maintaining and modernizing housing stock is critical to long-term affordability and livability. Rent increases and rent stabilization. Maryland law governs lease terms and notice requirements. Housing affordability is strongly influenced by supply, operating costs, and reinvestment. Rent control policies can be detrimental to tenants over the long term by reducing the number of rental units as small landlords exit the market and unintentionally incentivize annual rent increases, even when a landlord may not want to raise the rent. Discouraging long-term tenancy by penalizing reasonable market adjustments after turnover. Pet policy and deposits. Security deposit limits and fair housing requirements are already clearly addressed in state law. Pet-related fees must operate within those existing legal limits. Security deposits and refund practices. Maryland law already sets deposit limits, holding requirements, and refund timelines and documentation standards. Again, most disputes arise from lack of awareness or inconsistent documentation, not lack of law. Local efforts can focus on education for landlords and tenants. Housing stability. Housing stability is an important issue that does need to be addressed, and it is best approached through collaboration, not isolated policy changes. Therefore, Penmar Realtors would like to propose convening stakeholders to discuss housing stability challenges, identifying practical, locally informed solutions, and working together to balance tenant stability, housing supply, and responsible property ownership. And for that, we would like to coordinate and establish such a meeting with the City Council where we could offer our advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you. Next, Mr. Donald Joseph Schnellhardt, will be followed by Rebecca Homan and then Ms. Taj Smith.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Don Schnellhardt, which is spelled S as in Sam, Chelhar, D as in David, T as in Tom. I am a relative newcomer to Hagerstown, and I'm a retired government relations attorney. Contrary to most stereotypes, not all retired lawyers are rich. This one is not. And so I am faced with the problem, if I project current trends much into the future, that I may have to leave Hagerstown for lack of an affordable place to live. And rather than do that, I've been hoping to retire here, or retire permanently. I'm retired now. Okay, anyway, I had 3 points I wanted to say. I'll cut it to 2 for right now, and cover the third one in written comments, written statements, so that I can get the top 2 covered at least a little bit. Okay, my first point is my own rent, whatever other people's experience, has been going up much faster than the rate of inflation. I started off at $750 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment when I was on the waiting list. Then while I was on the waiting list, it went up, and then it's been going up since. Overall, if I took the current rate of inflation and applied it to my rent over the last 3 years, and determined that if my rent had tracked nothing more than inflation, it would have been $880 a month. That's an increase of 18% from $750. Instead, my rent has gone up from $750 to $1,042. That's 39%, about twice the inflation rate. And to me, that's awfully high. So anyway, I know landlords got to make money, but do they have to make that much money? A particular time when housing is so hard to pay for. Okay, the second point is, last summer I found a bedroom for $745, and it was a building with elevators and with level entrances. That's important to me because I have some mobility problems. Anyway, I was all set to take it, and then I discovered that my current landlord has in the lease that they're supposed to get. Is that it? Am I out? Oh, okay. Have to get 3 months' notice. That's $3,000.
Thank you. Please be reminded that you're all encouraged to provide written comments as well after this evening. Thank you, sir. Next up, Ms. Rebecca Holman, then Ms. Taj Smith, and then Ms. Lacey Webb.
Good evening. My name is Becky Homan, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the experiences of a member of my church, Elizabeth Holford. On the 13th of this year, Elizabeth, a 65-year-old disabled Navy veteran, was evicted from her apartment as she laid in an ICU bed on a ventilator at Meritus Hospital. Elizabeth rented an apartment with the help of Section 8 housing voucher. We should be ashamed that this could happen to any individual, let alone someone who served and sacrificed for our country. We need to do better. A few details of that story. Elizabeth is a 5-year member of our church, Zion Reformed United Church of Christ in downtown Hagerstown. She attended church on Sundays and joined us for Bible study potlucks on Wednesday. She volunteered at our food pantry on Tuesday mornings, a mission that Zion has provided to Hagerstown for 30 years. Like many of the Hagerstown community affected by digital divides, Elizabeth doesn't have a car, she doesn't have a computer, she does not have email address. Our church only found out about her housing problem in mid-November when she received an eviction notice on her door. Of a small group of church members who were alerted to her problem, none of us had ever navigated the Hagerstown Housing Authority, nor knew the intimate details of Elizabeth's personal situation. Following is what we pieced together from our conversations with her, efforts from our minister to visit the Housing Authority, members of a couple of church members, as well as telephone calls with the Housing Authority. Sometime in September 2025, Elizabeth received written notification about a problem with her Section 8 voucher. As the Housing Authority indicated, received no reply from her during the Section 8 housing voucher renewal program. In November, a second notice was sent with a return receipt requested. That was returned to sender to the Housing Authority as undeliverable. In mid-November, she received the eviction notice on her door indicating a court date in early December. Elizabeth asked her pastor to join her for 2 court dates. Both were held in December. During the first December court date our pastor attended, an attorney from the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau was assigned at the court appearance. It's still not quite clear what the purpose of that attorney was for. During the second court date, Elizabeth, again joined by her pastor, was notified there were no Hail Marys, there were no options. She was being evicted effective January 13th. On January 4th, Elizabeth was taken by ambulance to Meritus. It was then that she diagnosed with a perforated bowel and rushed to surgery. She remained in ICU and was sedated and intubated until January 28th. On January 12th, while Elizabeth was intubated, our church packed up her apartment, moved it into storage, praying that she would even survive. We had no option but to surrender her 2 beloved therapy kittens to the Humane Society. In hindsight, here's what we learned. Elizabeth has a social worker assigned to her. When she did not respond to that first notification of Section 8 housing, why was there not a wellness check? When the November notification was returned to sender, why was there not a wellness check? During court appearances, it became clear to us that Elizabeth did not have the ability to really comprehend the severity of the housing situation. She simply had lost her executive function. How long has her functioning been declining, and what is the responsibility of the social worker to bring this to the attention of the court? During our attempts to understand the history, okay. So my final comment is, Who advocates for our veterans in this community? This should never have happened. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ms. Taj Smith, and then following will be Lacey Webb and David Webb.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Taj Smith, and I'm president of the Washington County NAACP. The NAACP's position is that housing is a fundamental human right. Our organization supports initiatives like rent stabilization to protect tenants from displacement. We advocate for these measures as brown and black families are disproportionately crushed by high housing costs, becoming prey to unfair housing practices such as redlining and predatory rent hikes. We support caps because they prevent landlords from enacting these predatory practices. We favor policies that promote equity, including good cause eviction laws that prevent families from being uprooted without a valid reason. We should also do more to address the root causes of housing insecurity. The most direct cause is that wages have remained stagnant while housing costs have skyrocketed. In Hagerstown, the minimum wage does not cover the fair market rent. When a household spends more than 30% of their income on housing, they are considered rent burdened. When they hit 50%, they are at extreme risk of homelessness just after one missed paycheck or a medical emergency. For a person to live here without being rent burdened, they need an annual income of nearly $48,000. This is far above the median for many of our residents because rent has spiked at a rate that far outpaces any cost of living raises. Rent stabilization would act as a stopgap to keep our families from falling into homelessness. Rent stabilization isn't about hurting small landlords. It's about creating a predictable market that lowers turnover and creates stable tenancies. This reduces the costly cycle of eviction and vacancies for both owners and renters. Other cities across the state and country have successfully implemented rent stabilization. The Washington County NAACP calls on this council to enact a fair rent stabilization ordinance. We must stop the bleeding of our tenants while we work on long-term goals of increasing our housing supply. Hagerstown can be a city where everyone can afford to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, Lacey Webb. Lacey Webb. David Webb. Terrence Hooper.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Terrence Hooper. I own Wheaton Properties, LLC. I have 13 units within the city limits, and I've been a landlord in Hagerstown since 2002. I'm Vice President of the Landlord and Property Owners Association of Western Maryland. We're an educational organization which focuses on teaching our members best practices in landlording. We keep them aware of current and emerging legislation locally and at the state level. We currently have approximately 150 members, and we are also members of a larger organization, MMHA, the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, which represents 217,000 units statewide, equating to approximately 571,000 Marylanders housed. We take the education of our members very seriously. We believe that ultimately we are in a customer service industry. We believe in providing clean and safe housing. We want our tenants to be happy because ultimately if they are happy, it's a win-win situation for both of us. But there's a cost to providing a quality housing experience, and that cost has gone up dramatically since COVID came. Our property taxes, property insurance, cost of materials and supplies, the city's fees and utilities, and especially our labor costs have increased every year. Thankfully, there has been an increase of rents as well over that period of time, but not proportionately to the increase in our costs. Much of the increase in rents was due to the large number of jobs that have been available in our area. The jobs brought people, which caused a strain on our local housing market. As the warehouses have slowed their hiring, the demand for housing has decreased. Rents are starting to drop, and it has become harder to fill units. This is a clear example of the law on supply and demand functioning as it should. There are already many rules and regulations that govern how landlords must do their job. These include rental registration, interior and exterior inspections, lead registration and testing, and most recently, the Tenant Bill of Rights. I understand that the purpose of these rules and regulations is to promote fairness and safety in rental properties and in the landlord-tenant relationship. However, remember the law of supply and demand has many facets. As it becomes more difficult and more expensive to do business in an area, businesses will vote with their feet. They will stop investing in areas. They will sell their properties to owner-occupants, which will cause a reduction in available rental housing and drive rents up. I've passed out a couple of slides compiling data from Montgomery County's Department of Permitting Services and the U.S. Census Building Permits Survey. Montgomery County approved rent stabilization in July 2024. New permits at that time were 1,469 in the second quarter of 2024.
Mr. Hooper?
Just one more, let me finish this paragraph. When stabilization was passed, it dropped to 506 in the third quarter of 2024 and 173 in the fourth. The latest data that I have, which is the second quarter of 2025, shows new permits at 190. Both of these graphs show the impact that rent control has had on new building permits for both residential and multifamily housing. No new units means that the housing shortage will continue and once again keep rents higher. Thank you very much.
Next, Sandra Fowler. Sandra. Chantel Jones.
If someone don't show up, can I take this spot? Like I tried to register yesterday, but I was after the deadline.
So I think the expect.
Your written comments.
Yeah.
You can provide your written comments to us.
I will, but I would love to talk for a minute, if possible. We only have people that didn't show up.
No. You can provide your written comments. Thank you.
Okay. Chantel Jones. Stacy McGee. After Stacy, Taylor Verheyden Smith, followed by Brandon Thomas.
Hi, my name is Stacy McGee. I teach economics at HCC, although I am not here representing HCC today. I've been teaching economics there for about 25 years, and I am not a landlord or a renter, so I'm a neutral party, but I thought one of the things we talk about is the economic impact of rent control, so I thought that might be helpful in your decision making, although I will say my comments are mostly on the impact on renters rather than landlords. But without drawing a bunch of supply and demand graphs for you, when we have a price control in effect, we have two things that happen. One is it attracts more renters, that it's now affordable to them, so there are more people that are willing and able to rent, so we have more people looking for apartments. At the same time, there will become less apartments available over time. So the lower profit, it won't attract new people to develop new properties, so people that would be redeveloping in the city would not be attracted to do that, so we won't have new apartments coming in, and at the same time, the decreased profits will lead landlords to find alternative uses for the space. So they might rent it out as commercial, or instead of apartments, do short-term peer-to-peer like Airbnb, where they are not subject to the rent control and can charge a higher price there. So we have a situation where we have more people looking for apartments, less apartments available. Now we have a housing shortage. And then the shortage leads to other snowball effects. And there are a lot, but the main ones I want to talk about are the landlords have less of an incentive to upkeep and to maintain the apartments. Because of the shortage, there's now a lack of competition. So if you don't like the cockroaches and the leaky pipes, I got 30 people waiting for this apartment. And so they tend to degrade in quality over time. And the other thing is there tends to develop a black market. So officially I am paying you the government controlled price, but then to make sure I'm one of the ones that gets the apartment in the shortage, I will pay you under the table. And so the price that you end up paying is higher than it was before the rent control. And the longer the rent controls are in place, the more you tend to see that. So you put the rent controls in place to try to help the low-income people, and you end up creating a series of problems beyond that, for the very people that you were trying to help. So as you develop a policy, there are ways to mitigate these. It's just important to understand that those will be the side effects of the rent control, and keep those things in mind, whether you have incentives for landlords to upkeep, or whether you do housing vouchers instead of rent control, so that you can help the people that need it without affecting the supply side of it. But people get creative, and there are a lot of ways to do it, but just try to keep those things in mind as you put your policies forward. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. McGee? Thank you. Next is Taylor Verheyden Smith, followed by Brandon Thomas and Aaron Peterance.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Smith. Like many of you, my capital is deeply rooted in the city. Between TVS Investments and Profabricators, I operate in the trenches of both real estate and manufacturing. I recently brought SVN callsign Capital to Hagerstown because I believe that local owners deserve access to the global platform that moves nearly $16 billion in assets annually. We need to speak plainly about the math. In marketing functions at 8% capitalization rate, every dollar increase in government mandate cost, whether through taxes, fees, or cap revenue, instantly wipes out $12.50 off your asset valuation. If the ordinance passes, we aren't talking about tight year for cash flow. We're talking about a systematic devaluation of your equity. When a municipality implements a rent stabilization, history shows a decay spiral, and inevitable is inevitable. The community suffers because incentives improve vanishes. We see deferred maintenance, freeze in new construction, permanent caps, and the neighborhood potential. As owners, I see three options on the table. Option one, absorption strategy. You hold and accept $12 to $1 equity erosion. Option two, the capital expenditure freeze. You stop all non-essential improvements to preserve cash. This protects your immediate bottom line, but risk long-term asset depreciation and community decline. Option three, institutional harvest. You exit the market now while valuations are still potential rather than limitations. For those seeking option three, at SVN callsign Capital, we are aggregating a strategic Maryland portfolio to group assets with local owners to move from being landlord to being part of a high institutional offering. But a sale is only half the strategy. We do a 1031 exchange to redeploy your capital tax-free. While Hagerstown discusses caps, markets like Dallas, Fort Worth, Nashville, Charlotte are rolling the red carpet out for quality landlords. They understand pro-growth environments lead to better housing, higher property values, stronger communities. The 1031 specialist can move your equity from limitation-based market into opportunity-based without sting of capital gains. Hagerstown has been a cornerstone of business growth, but professional investing is knowing when the risk profile is fundamentally shifted. Don't let the city decide your equity worth. I'll be in the back of the room available once this adjourns. Let's discuss how to move your capital to celebrate where it's celebrated and not targeted. Thank you.
Next is Brandon Thomas, followed by Aaron Peterance, and then Stacy Michael.
Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Brandon Thomas. I'm a small housing provider here in our region, and I run a local real estate investor meetup. And like my tenants, I feel the rising cost of living every day. I care deeply about keeping housing in Hagerstown safe, stable, and reasonably priced. And I'm here to respectfully ask you not to adopt strict rent control or rent stabilization. I want to start by acknowledging something important. Housing affordability is a real issue. Wages haven't kept up with costs, and when rent rises, families feel it immediately. But those same pressures are hitting property owners too. Property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance costs have all increased. In Hagerstown, combined city and county property taxes already represent a major annual expense, and recent assessment increases mean many landlords are paying significantly more each year, even without raising rent. When rent is capped while these costs continue to rise, small landlords are squeezed the hardest. Large corporations can simply choose not to invest here. Small landlords, on the other hand, are invested in this community. We live here, we take pride in providing safe housing, and while I know not every landlord is the same, and I truly apologize to those who've dealt with bad ones, please know there are many good landlords trying to do the right thing. Second, economic studies, including those conducted in Maryland, consistently show that strict rent control has serious unintended consequences. Over time, it discourages new construction, reduces property values, and leads to deferred maintenance. That means fewer new units, aging buildings that don't get needed upgrades, and a shrinking tax base. The end result is less housing and lower quality housing, especially for the very people these policies aim to help. Third, most small landlords are not corporations with endless resources. Many own 1 or 2 properties as a retirement plan or to supplement income. We're the ones answering the phone when a furnace fails at midnight or a pipe bursts in winter. Evictions are costly for us, and they're a last resort. Most of us prefer to work with tenants through hard times, but rent control makes that flexibility harder, not easier. Instead of rent caps, I urge you to focus on solutions that address the real drivers of rent increases and eviction risk. Look at property taxes and assessments. Consider moderating increases, phasing in assessment jumps, or offering targeted credits for well-maintained rental housing. Invest in eviction prevention tools like emergency rental assistance that goes directly to the landlord. These approaches keep families housed while allowing owners to cover their costs. If the council feels a rent policy must be considered, please prioritize flexibility and predictability over hard caps, such as strong notice requirements and protections against extreme one-time rent gouging. Hagerstown needs a balanced approach that supports tenants, keeps housing investable, and encourages ongoing care for our rental stock. Going through here. I appreciate the difficult work you're doing and share your goal of long-term housing stability. Thank you for your time. And lastly, I'd like to say my best tenants have been ones that I had tried to evict, and we've been able to work it out in court, and they're still with me today.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you. Next speaker, Aaron Pederance. Stacy Michael. Following Stacy will be Timothy Miller and Heather Tapley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having this session so that you can hear from the constituents. I think that this is a really critical issue, and I'm hoping that it's one that we do not take lightly. At face value, rent stabilization sounds like a great idea, and I remember a couple of years ago when it was discussed, I felt that it was very necessary. But then what I realized is I know a lot of local landlords, and they are good. Their price point is exactly where it should be, and they are only passing on increases that they receive. They are good landlords. The flip side of that is that not every landlord in this area is a good landlord. And I think that's really where the focus needs to be, is doing the research and meeting with people to find out what the holes are and the gaps are between a good landlord and somebody that's taking advantage of the system and being a bad landlord. For example, somebody that's rented for 13 years and then suddenly gets a notice that they are not going to renew their lease for no other reason than probably bumping up. And then that person has to find a new affordable place. Or a apartment building is sold and it's now being managed by a larger corporation and they choose to bump up the rate over 50% of what the person was currently paying. Those are the issues that I would like to see the council focus on, less about hurting our local landlords that are doing everything right and are good landlords, more about protecting the tenants from the bad landlords and from our community. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Timothy Miller, followed by Heather Tapley and Deborah Steenberg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Tim Miller. I just want to run by some numbers here from my own personal experience. We just bought a 6-unit property on the north side of Hagerstown. My mortgage payment for a year is $46,800. Property insurance is $5,700. Property taxes last year, $8,000 and some dollars. This year with the new assessment, it will be $11,626.55. That is one heck of an increase. Where is my protection from that? Water and sewer, $3,600. Oh yeah, the last 3 years, the city of Hagerstown increased water and sewer rates by 13 and 14% respectively. I can't raise my tenants' rents that much, can I? But you can raise my water rates that much. Lead registration, $450. City registration, $450. Yearly HVAC inspection, $1,600. Lawn and snow removal, $1,800. That totals $72,000 a year. For 6 units, that comes to $6,000 a month. That is $1,000.37 per unit. I have to do $1,300 for these 2-bedroom units. That gives me $300. Everything else goes to the mortgage company, to property taxes, and to the city for water and sewer. That $300 gives me $21,000 a year. I don't get that money. I have to save that money. Why? Because I got to pay my taxes at the end of the year. I got to put money back for reserves because I need to have 6 months reserves. Right now, if one of those boilers was to die, I would probably have to take a personal loan to get it fixed. So rent control will just make it harder for anybody to start out into owning property, because this is my retirement for me and my husband. And with those numbers, if anybody wants to see, I would be more than happy to provide all invoices. Thank you.
Next, we have Heather Tapley, followed by Deborah Steenberg.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this topic. My name is Heather Tapley. I'm a lifelong Hagerstown resident. I want to talk about how rent stabilization is more than just a policy. It is something that directly affects the average person's ability to stay housed and remain an active participant in their community. Rent instability is not just about money. It can be the difference between being able to have a roof over your head or living in a hotel or a car. It is about whether you can plan your life at all. I lived at the same residence for over 7 years. My rent for a 1-bedroom started at $625 and ended at $1,125. Nothing about the unit improved, only the cost of staying did. Utilities that were once included, like water, were later shifted onto the tenants at additional costs. Some people are one unexpected rent increase away from being displaced. Finding a new place isn't a solution, it's another barrier. Imagine being evicted because your rent increased and you can't afford to pay the difference. Your security deposit from that residence doesn't come to you for at least another 30 days. But to find new housing, you are expected to pay application fee after application fee, just being repeatedly denied. You're finally accepted, but the $2,000 to $4,000 security deposit you need up front is currently in the mail from the last place that you were displaced from. This is a continuous cycle and a current reality that many people in our community are facing, that some are privileged to never have to experience at all. Additionally, housing assistance isn't immediate or preventative. Wait lists for housing assistance are often 6 months or longer. Many assistance programs are first come, first serve with extremely limited funding. Help frequently arrives after someone is in crisis and facing displacement. On paper, tenants are told to seek legal remedies, but legal action isn't a realistic option for many tenants either. Tenants might need to seek legal counsel for unfair evictions, security deposits being unfairly withheld, or unsafe living conditions. It requires time, access, and money up front, which are resources that people who are already struggling to stay housed do not have. Most landlords have the advantage of having multiple sources of incomes, while tenants do not have that same privilege and are forced to use their limited income to fight for basic tenant rights. That imbalance perpetuates a cycle where abuse and instability go unchecked. Rent stabilization matters because it's preventative. It means reasonable limits on how much rent can increase in a given year. It is also reflective of cost of living increases so people aren't hit with sudden destabilizing jumps. Good policies allow landlords to earn a fair return while giving tenants the opportunity to live their life without fear of being unhoused. This is not about choosing sides. It's about recognizing that affordable housing is a basic foundation for everything else. Rent stabilization is a tool for balance, for keeping communities intact while still allowing growth. People deserve to know that they won't lose their homes overnight simply because the market shifted faster than their lives could.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm clapping for myself.
Next we have Deborah Steenberg, followed by Damian Myers.
Mayor McIntyre, council members, thank you very much for holding this meeting. I'm Debbie Steenberg. I'm here as a private citizen. I live on Woodcrest Road in Hagerstown. And I'm here to ask you to consider the long-term consequences of what you decide on this issue and what behaviors you will be incentivizing. I'm speaking in opposition to the proposal of rent control for several reasons. I've got like 15 of them. And then also I have probably 10 or more with examples of suggestions on possible solutions that could help. So, first of all, the effect on there is an effect on low-income families in that those who are paying the lower controlled rents, their gain comes at the expense of new residents. The latter group often ends up living in more expensive, uncontrolled housing or lower quality regulated rental units. Some people will tell you that rent control will decrease homelessness, but any potential total reduction in homelessness may be offset by an overall decrease in housing supply, as many people have mentioned, and I will also mention later on. Okay. Rent control can lower the number of units being built over the long term because it lowers property values and the potential return on investment for landlords, making it less attractive to build new rental units, and developers may shift capital to other more profitable markets. It will cause a reduction in the existing number of rental units. Landlords will convert rental properties to other uses, such as commercial properties or condominiums, reducing the existing rental housing stock. It will also have an effect on uncontrolled rentals because the renters in uncontrolled dwellings will pay higher rents and spend more time looking for housing. Those people with larger families will be affected because if a tenant's children have grown and moved out, or a couple or a widow may be afraid to downsize, making the unit unavailable for a family needing that sized home. There will be deterioration of existing housing because of reduced maintenance, deferred repairs, foregone renovations because it'll be simply too expensive for the landlord to keep up. All this will lower property values as the landlords allow their properties to wear out, which will cause the real value of the dwelling will decrease to become equal to the lower real rent. This will disincentivize some people from owning their own home because they will be less inclined to become homeowners since because of their position. And you can read the rest.
Thank you. And finally, the folks registered to speak tonight, Damian Myers.
Mayor, council, thank you. We are private landlords with 7 units in the city. We have 10 overall since 2004. We've not had a single code violation in years. We are frequent award certificates of appreciation from Code and Compliance, which this is our most recent one since December. Yet, it's becoming more difficult to attract decent tenants, even when their units are below the market rate. We hold the units below market rate because without the annual increases, the neighborhood continues to decline year after year. Our tax bill just went up an average unit of $52,000, but yet we can't increase the rent, even though the water, electric increases. That's taxes, or tax assessment, that's 30%. Between the crime and the belated rental properties surrounding us, it makes it difficult to maintain decent tenants on a long-term basis, despite our efforts. Point that being said, consider the circumstances when you're adding yet another additional regulation, perhaps fees that will impact small private landlords like my family, already struggling to maintain their property in city limits. A few years ago on Christmas Day, 3 a.m., a pipe burst. Who went? 4-year-old daughter broke her heart. I was there all day on Christmas Day. That's what we do. But being a landlord today is significantly more difficult than what it was 15, 10, or even 5 years ago. Every year we struggle with the decision, are we going to sell our properties? Most of them have sentimental value to us. We continuously call crime tip lines. We get no results, no visible measure of action. We had 2 murders across the street and multiple ODs behind the property, which still are happening. We've called and complained other property management companies. They seem to be ignored. The properties continue to deteriorate in what appears to be inhabitable. I have videos from my tenant's Ring camera of the trash that is piled up higher than that ceiling next to their house that's right across the street from our. At times, this has led to rodent infestations to our properties and that we have to remediate, yet nothing can be done. We've had several tenants destroy our properties and go months without paying rent, yet it's incredibly difficult to evict them in the courts. So what I've heard here this evening is, it's been stated multiple times, the root issue is the living wage within the city and within the county. Not to increase rent to cover the expenses, but how are we going to cover our own expenses? Please keep in mind, it's not easy being a landlord. Legislation is not one size fits all for landlords.
There were a few individuals who registered to speak, so I'm going to call your name one more time. If you happen to come in after I called your name, please come forward. Crystal Ray, Christina Dana, Regina Hawkins, Lacey Webb, David Webb, Chantel Jones, Aaron Petterance. So on behalf of the mayor and council members, thank you all for coming tonight to share your thoughts. There may be some of you who want to provide input. That's certainly encouraged. And if you go to the city website, you're able to do that after this evening and before February 19th. So thank you. Mayor?
One moment. Thank you, Mary Ellen. I do want to have opportunity for mayor and council if you want to say anything. Anything? And as far as next steps, though, we have you can provide your written comments by the 19th, and then we're also going to come to a work session to discuss the feedback that we've heard. We're going to make it very public so everyone can watch and hear deliberation, and thank you for your feedback.
Excuse me, you
Councilman?
have no names across the front. If you're going to address us, if you would please tell us who you are so everybody knows who's speaking.
We'll go down the line. We'll go ahead and, you have any comments? This is Councilman Kristen Alshire.
I'm Kristen Elsh. I'm a council member for the city. So about 4 years ago, if anybody attends the State of the City videos, and I don't know if Paul Fry's still here, but during the State of the City video, each of us sort of pick a topic that we'd like to have a discussion or at least put into the video. And that particular year, which is about 2 years after COVID, I selected the topic of housing for two reasons. And in that video, it starts out, and I'm in a neighborhood, and I said, people want to live here, and then it shows me in front of a hotel, and I said, just not here. And the reality at that time, post-COVID, was that very fact, that the city was dealing with, and probably the county as a whole, two issues. We have an issue of housing availability, which is creating a housing affordability issue. I firmly believe that because pre-COVID, there were 1,200 to 1,600 units for sale, houses for sale in Washington County. I think the last look I did was about 300 available today. That's the difference in available stock to purchase. On the rental side, pre-COVID, there were anywhere from 600 to 700 units available on average in Washington County. When I looked recently, I think we're somewhere between 300 and 400. So those numbers have not rebounded at all. And compounding that, probably on folks looking to buy houses and investors looking to build or invest in rentals, the interest rates went from 3% to 7 or 8%. And those two items created what I truly believe is the most pressing or impactful issue in this county, which is odd because 10 or 15 years ago, I remember all of Robinwood Drive was getting built, all of those units out there. And the city's concern was everybody was going to leave the apartments downtown, and then downtown would be empty of folks wanting to rent apartments. And that hasn't happened at all. We have more interest in moving here. However, what has compounded that issue even further, at least in my opinion, in the last several years, is there is a lot of land that was slated for housing development that didn't happen. Instead, we got a lot of warehouses. And I don't think that's a bad thing for this community, but we still needed to figure out, and I said to Paul during that State of the City, the 800-pound gorilla in this room 4 years ago was housing availability, because it is hurting housing affordability. And that hasn't corrected itself. And while there have been a number of warehouses built, bringing those individuals in and those jobs in, they are having to seek housing in West Virginia. If anybody drives over Spring Mills, the place became a city overnight, and those areas in Pennsylvania. However, one of the things that hurts the city's ability to add housing, whether it's apartments, whether it's condos, townhouses, single family, is we can only participate in approval of development for those areas that are within the city limits. And I try my best not to bring the county into this conversation this evening, but it is it's basic. It's basic mathematics. Property owner has a greenfield property out along 81. They want to develop that property for residential purposes. They want to build 300 houses, apartments, complexes, whatever. They have to come into the city boundaries in order to obtain the appropriate zoning classification in order to be able to build that density of housing units on that property. However, that requires annexation. That annexation process goes through the county process, and the county gets to decide whether they're going to waive the difference between city and county zoning, or whether they're going to say, we're not going to waive it. Property owner, you got to wait another 5 years before you're allowed to engage the city in being able to develop that property. Every time that happens, that puts a 5-year moratorium or 5-year additional delay on this community and the greater Hagerstown area, frankly, and being able to add the necessary housing stock that we need in all of those different types in order to lower the affordability, because the demand, as one of the gentlemen pointed out in the back, remains so high because of that factor. They don't have those same limiting factors in communities to the north and south of us that we are sort of imposing upon ourselves unnecessarily here.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Readers. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Councilmember Erica Bell. And I just had something that I had wanted to read because I know so many of us are that paycheck away. And speaking for myself, I could be one of those people. I own my home, but my mortgage is cheaper than me renting. But I just wanted to read something. I don't know what this looks like 100%. But people staying in their homes longer, especially seniors and families with kids and those on fixed incomes, this directly reduces displacement. Studies show that rent-regulated areas have lower turnover and displacement in similar non-regulated areas. When families don't have to move constantly, schools, neighborhoods, and local economies benefit. Children stay in the same schools, social networks remain intact, and residents can invest in their communities. Rent stability keeps housing affordable relative to income, especially crucial when rents are rising faster than wages. This helps lower and middle income people in Hagerstown. So I say that all to say, I am one of those people. So I hear all of your cries with the rent and how hard it is to maintain and the rise of everything. But also I hear the landlords too. It's different when you get to hear the viewpoint of a landlord or a property owner versus the non-property owners. So I just want to thank everyone for their comments and their input. It helps me understand the landlord side a little bit better, and also the renters as well. So thank you.
Well, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself anyway?
Oh, yes. Councilwoman T.R. Burnett.
You go ahead.
Sure. Councilmember Caroline Anderson. And I just kind of want to reiterate the same comments that we've been hearing over and over again. It's very evident we have a problem here. So the fact that everyone came out tonight and spoke and gave ideas, opinions, showed us both sides. We can't just lay our heads and sleep on this. I believe in this body and the mayor, and I believe that we are going to come to some sort of resolution to help both sides, but I want everyone in this room to understand that it's not going to be an overnight fix. It's not going to be an instant sort of gratification, but it is something that we are stressing, and it is deeply concerning as far as one of our issues that we have today. And that's all I have.
I'm Councilman Sean Flaherty. I want to thank everybody that showed up here on both sides of the debate. You know, I understand the affordability issue firsthand. I lived in Alexandria paying $2,200 for a studio apartment in 2019. The brand new townhomes behind me were starting at $850,000. My mortgage here in Hagerstown is significantly cheaper than what I paid there. You know, but again, government, what is our role into it? And that's a great debate. You know, property taxes, I did not support us increasing those. I don't support utility increases because that goes to y'all, the folks. And that hurts everybody, whether you're a tenant or whether you're a landlord. At the end of the day, government needs to trim down their own belt so folks can bring home more of their paycheck. As you all know, you go to the grocery store, you're robbed, you know, just getting $50 worth of groceries. And it's not going to get better. The state of Maryland has had more people leave the state than move in. And the comptroller's report has shown that. The taxes and fees have continuously gotten worse here. So I would say this, I don't support any type of rent control. I believe letting the free market do its thing. And we will become like California because it is a supply and demand issue. You know, and that's why in San Diego, my friend paid $865,000 for a fixer-upper, you know, and right now, I don't want Maryland to become like that. It's all about supply and demand and build, you know, and that's what we have to do. And we have to make incentives for builders to want to come and invest here. And we have to make it for investors that want to deal with us. And the taxes and fees, along with everything else, is going to be, you know, a consideration. But I do agree, wages are stagnant. You know, we need to attract higher paying jobs here. You know, we do not make the money that Montgomery and Prince George's and Washington, D.C. have. And we make nothing here. The median income is in the 40 ranges. That's a joke. So I agree with both sides of this. I don't believe we should do any type of rent control, but we should do a better job as a body, keeping taxes low and keeping your, you know, wallet, you know, a lot lighter, whether you're a tenant or landlord. and I really appreciate everybody coming here.
Okay, I'm Mayor Bill McIntyre. First, I want to reiterate a point of what Councilman Alshire said about annexation. And I'm going to ask Mr. Scott, our City Administrator, Scott Nicewarner, to give us an update on that. But there is a bill in the Maryland House right now about express annexation. If you could fill us in on that.
There was a hearing today in the local government committee on the House side that would do exactly what Councilman Alshire said, go back to the prior to 2006 annexation policy, which basically relied on the county and the city's comprehensive codes to make decisions versus having the county be the entity that could either deny an annexation or allow an annexation if zoning was different. A great example of that is a particular development that was zoned as commercial. The city had a potential 1,200 unit affordable housing, market rate housing development that was planned for that area that would have been contiguous and which would have required express approval because the zoning is different, and it was denied. So when it's denied, there has to be a 5-year wait, as Councilman Alshire spoke on, and the developer bailed. So we lost 1,200 units of market rate housing in the city for that, and that's only one of 3 that we have lost because of that situation. So we had 24 other municipalities that were witnesses today. Most of them were through written testimony. Salisbury was another one that actually did regular testimony, in-person testimony, and was well received. So we'll look forward to see what we could do there. But that would just open up more available land for additional housing and to increase the market rate and affordable housing stock in the city.
I too am a landlord as well. It's not in the city of Hagerstown, but it's actually in West Virginia. I can only say this based on my experience, and there's somebody pretty wise in this room that advised me on when I bought the home of what I should be making percentage-wise to stay viable. That has gone away. I bought this house 3 years ago, and in order that my taxes went up, as well as they shorted my escrow. So I actually have to pay way more for this house right now, and it's over the amount of rent that I'm charging. And since this person is actually an employee of mine, I chose not to raise his rent. If I were going to raise the rent to get back to where I was, I'd have to increase his rent by $680, and that's pretty substantial. But I just wanted to say that on my own experience. I appreciate everybody's input, both sides of this, and I 100% appreciate everyone coming out this evening as well. So I'm braving the cold and coming out.
All right. And again, if you have written comments, please send them to councilcomments@hagerstownmaryland.org by the 19th.
Even
And
if you spoke from prepared,
yeah,
send those too.
yeah, that'll be
Please.
great. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.